Hola, ¿qué tal? Mi nombre es Germán Díaz y les doy la bienvenida a DSpace Talk. Este espacio, que es generado por el Grupo Mexicano de Usuarios de DSpace, está hecho por y para nuestra comunidad de nuestra región, aquí en Latinoamérica y específicamente aquí en México, en el cual vamos a entender cuál es el presente, el pasado y por supuesto que el futuro de los repositorios institucionales. En este primer episodio vamos a tener una conversación así de interesante y de importante y sobre todo relevante para todos los usuarios mexicanos de DSpace, en el cual vamos a abordar muchas de las preguntas fundamentales que estoy seguro que en nuestra región muchas instituciones tienen. Por ejemplo, ¿cómo se toman las decisiones que en verdad determinan el futuro de esa plataforma? ¿O de qué forma puedo hacer que mi comunidad sea más participativa dentro de este grupo mexicano de usuarios? Y por supuesto, pero no también menos importante, ¿qué implicaciones técnicas tiene a futuro las siguientes instalaciones o actualizaciones de la plataforma? Pues bien, para responder a esta y otras preguntas, nuestra compañera y amiga Nydia López ha traído uno de los invitados más relevantes desde entonces del mundo de DSpace. Se trata de Holger, quien es un miembro activo y participativo de la comunidad internacional de DSpace. Él nos va a responder unas preguntas en esta entrevista que va a estar dividida en dos secciones. La primera, vamos a hablar todo lo correspondiente a la forma de participación comunitaria de DSpace y pues las estructuras de gobernanza. Mientras que en la segunda mitad vamos a hablar de todos aquellos aspectos técnicos que seguramente ustedes como administrador de repositorios estarán muy interesados en conocer. Así que no demos más dilación y vamos contigo, Nid. Adelante con la entrevista.
Thank you so much for being in this interesting interview. This is the first session for this program called DSpace Talk. In this case, here is Holger. He is from the DSpace program coordination, and we are really happy that you are here, Holger. Welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nydia. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And we have asked some questions to the general community in Latin American region and also Spanish region. And we have some interesting questions that we would like to talk with you in this time. All of these questions are related to DSpace and the next functionalities, the future of the repositories in the region. And the first question is, now that DSpace is changing the technology and also the strategy, the community is asking, how does DSpace governance ensure the project's long-term sustainability? How the principal team and the governance are preparing this plan, and also all the next activities and actions to ensure that this platform, this technology, will be enough in the next years.
It's a good question. Thank you. I'll try to answer the question maybe by talking about two things. First, I'll talk a little bit about DSpace governance, and then also what it means for a project or for an open source program like DSpace to be sustainable. How can we define that, and what does that mean? So as you may know or may not know, DSpace governance consists of two main groups. The first group is the leadership group. The leadership group is elected each year from the member institutions that support DSpace. So once a year we have an election, and all member institutions get to nominate candidates to serve on the leadership group. And so once the election takes place and once everything's been finalized, November 1st of each year, that's when we then start with the new governance here. The leadership group has about a little over 20 members. We also have 2 members on the leadership group that are called community at large, which means that they are nominated from within the community but don't have to be members, which allows for greater representation. So also including institutions perhaps that cannot afford membership. And the leadership group sets the strategic priorities, makes the strategic decisions for DSpace, for the DSpace program and for the DSpace software. So anything that has to do with where is DSpace going, what is the future, which features are going to be developed, what emphasis will be laid in the next few years on the development of DSpace. That's the leadership group has the final decision on those questions. It's really the main governing body that DSpace has. From the leadership group, within the leadership group, there is a smaller group which is called the DSpace steering group, and they are more involved in the day-to-day affairs. They meet monthly, whereas the leadership group meets every 3 months. And steering basically makes recommendations then to leadership. Steering works out the details of the direction that leadership provides. And leadership then agrees and signs off on the suggestions that steering makes. So that's the governance in a very, very brief description. That's the governance structure of DSpace. Now, in terms of the word sustainability, what does that mean? Sustainability, usually we think about the long-term success, the long-term feasibility of a program like DSpace. How do we make sure that we are investing in a way into the program that DSpace is not just going to be operational for a year, 2 years, but rather we're really thinking about the long-term impact and the long-term outlook for the program. Of course, there is uncertainty with all of that, as with any program. But to answer that question, to put the two together, the governance and the sustainability, DSpace governance has the responsibility to oversee the budget for DSpace. So they maintain they maintain themselves the right to make decisions about the budget, to how to invest the budget that DSpace has. And as you know, as an open source program, DSpace is completely dependent on the membership fees that we receive through membership contributions. So it has to be invested wisely. We have to make sure that the governance invested in a way that we spend the money in a way that it's feasible in a long-term way, but also making strategic decisions that impact the program, making sure that we align with open source goals that are prioritized, that are of interest to our community around the world. We have users in all parts of the world. We have users in Europe and in Latin America, North America, Africa, Asia. What is important to them? How do their use of DSpace within their repositories fit in with the overall outlook of open source and open science? And so those are all decisions that have to be taken into account. And those are all decisions that are made by a governance. And that's how I would answer that question, really. Governance takes a lot of time discussing these issues within their meetings, making sure they stay on top of things, and on top of developments that are going on in the open source and open science community, collaborating with other initiatives, and all of that. And that's the main way, really, we try to make sure that DSpace remains sustainable.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting, because according that what you are saying, I think we are opening new questions. For example, you are saying that there is a membership for the institutions to be part of DSpace. How the institutions could be part, how they can be becoming a DSpace member, and what are the benefits to this program?
Yeah. So, like I said, DSpace membership is the main way to support DSpace. And you can kind of think of it as the difference between DSpace users and DSpace members, right? So every institution that uses DSpace around the world, that has a DSpace repository, is called a DSpace user. And sometimes we have user groups, for example, a Mexican user group, where users organize themselves and work together and share ideas and share experiences and all of that. But since DSpace is an open source program, we give it away for free, and we do not make any revenue or have any income from the development of DSpace itself and the use of DSpace itself. So what we have is a membership model where institutions can pledge to support DSpace. It can be really at any amount. We have different tiers, tier structures, starting with platinum. We have a gold membership, we have a silver membership, bronze, copper, and then a supporter membership. But basically what that means, it gives institutions an opportunity to give back to DSpace, to make sure that initiatives that are open source are sustainable, because we want to benefit the community. The community means really the entire world, every institution around the world. And of course, there are institutions around the world that may not be able to afford to have a commercial system, to have a customized system that is very expensive, that takes a lot of resources to maintain. And so they rather use something as open source as DSpace, which is reliable and which is the most widely used institutional repository around the world. And so then in order to be able to sustain that model, membership is a way to do that. Now, as to your question about the benefits, one of the benefits, or the great benefits, really is to know that you are participating in the open source community. You are giving back to the open source community. There's some other benefits that you have. You, for example, get to have your name and your logo of the institutions that you are a membership or are a member through mentioned on our website. You are included in some events as well that we have, virtual events. But another, or maybe even the biggest benefit that you have as a member is the opportunity to serve on governance. Like I said earlier, the leadership group is elected from the members. So each year there is this election within all of the members in the DSpace community. And if you decide to become a DSpace member, the platinum level, the gold level, the silver level, and the bronze level all have the opportunity then to serve on governance. And if you are on governance, of course, you have a stronger voice in determining the future of DSpace. And you can continue to be of greater support to the community in that way, in bringing in your experience, bringing in your voice into those discussions that you have, and making sure that you contribute to the sustainability of DSpace. So that's really the greatest benefit, I would say, that comes from membership.
Okay, and for example, if one institution is not a member but have some feedback for the DSpace itself, how they can contribute with this? Or, for example, if they have some ideas for the development for the improvement of this platform, those institutions could give this feedback. What will be the best way in comparison with for example, the DSpace members? Because as I am understanding, a DSpace member could participate in the annual election. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
But in this annual election, I don't know if there is a section where they talk about the future of DSpace within this group, and if they are taking in consideration the community feedback.
Yes. So the election itself is just a process. There are no meetings or anything like that where there is an opportunity to share feedback within the election. But there are several ways that both users and members can share feedback and try to get their voice in to the process of development that happens. So I'll start by, let me go back briefly to, if you are a DSpace member and if you are elected to governance, for example, then you serve on DSpace leadership or you serve on DSpace steering. Of course, in those meetings, you will always have a voice of sharing the ideas that you have heard about from the community with governance. So for example, let's say there's an institution in Latin America, they're a DSpace member, they run for nominations for the election, they get a seat on leadership. They can now represent the voices within the Latin American community. So they might hear within their country, within their region, within their user group, that a lot of institutions maybe are dealing with a particular problem, or maybe they really would like to see a particular feature in DSpace. Now they can bring that into those governance meetings, and then governance will consider that, and based on the feedback and based on the conversations and discussions, then we'll make a decision to either implement that, to move forward with it, or what route to take. So that's one of the main ways that members can bring in their feedback if they're elected to governance. Anyone who's not on governance, of course, there's only a limited amount of institutions that are on governance, so not everyone can be part of those meetings. So what can you do? There are several ways. First of all, you might have heard of the DSpace Community Advisory Team. It's, in short, it's called DCAT, D-C-A-T. And this team is a group of institutional repository managers, and they meet each month. And the meetings for the meeting schedule is found on our website, and I can share that link later. I'm happy to share that. And in those meetings, we have institutional repository managers that meet from all over the world. And it's basically a way for them to exchange their experiences, to have conversations about what is going on in their repositories, in their institutions, and all of that. As an example, we just recently, within DCAT, we just recently had a working group that looked at the user interface of DSpace, and they made a UX study or a UX assessment of that user interface and how users experience the DSpace interface, and then make recommendations and all of that for that. And they're in the process of talking about that right now. So those are great ways to get involved. If you're not able to, or if you haven't been able to join those meetings, please consider joining them. That's one way to really get your voice into DSpace, because the DCAT chair has a direct connection to governance. In fact, they have a non-voting seat on the leadership group. So they can take all the suggestions, all the ideas, the discussions that are being heard and talked about in these DCAT meetings over to the governance meetings and bring their voice in there. So again, my strong encouragement is, and please try to join those meetings. Even if you're not a member, that's open to everyone. If you're a user of DSpace, anyone can join those meetings. There are no restrictions or requirements for you to be a member at all. The same is true for developer meetings. So if you are a developer, if you are experienced with writing code, if you work with DSpace code, think about joining the weekly developer meetings. That's where you will be meeting with our tech lead, Tim Donahue, who takes care of the technical development, or takes care of leading the technical development in DSpace. And in those meetings too, there are opportunities to think about ways to implement certain features, or think about ways, okay, here's something that we've been trying to work on for a while, but we haven't had the manpower, we haven't had the resources. This is something that you can take on and say, let me write a ticket, or let me write a pull request and upload that to GitHub. And so those are really two main ways to get your voice heard and to get involved in DSpace itself. DSpace being open source, it's a community project, right? It's a community program. It's all community driven, and we are dependent on the support from the community. The DSpace program altogether has not even 2 full-time employees. So only 2 people, or actually less than 2 full-time, are paid for their work on DSpace. Everything else is done by the community. Now, that's amazing. That is incredible. But it also means that each user has their responsibility of trying to contribute to the DSpace program and to the success of it. And each input is valuable. Please don't feel like because you don't have much experience, you're not valuable. Not at all. We value all the experience, all the voices, and everything that we can hear and get from the community. That's so important. So I hope that kind of answered your question. I talked for a while here now, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think you are answering one of the next questions. What is the importance of DSpace group? Because there are different groups around the world, in Europe, Latin America, and Africa, but sometimes the community doesn't know how they can be in communication with this group in DSpace, and what are the role of these DSpace groups. But according to what you are saying, DSpace has a specific group that are spreading these governance decisions and also the strategies according to the DSpace groups, and this the community in general, the users and the institutions could have a better understanding of the strategies and the platform itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, sorry. Go ahead. Did you have another thought? No. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about the user groups, because it sometimes, or let me put it this way, there are so many different parts of the DSpace community, really. You know, we've already talked about governance, leadership, steering. We've talked about DCAD. We've talked about the developers. Sometimes they can be a little bit confusing, like what are all the different parts? And so I hopefully the explanations that I've given help to clarify that a little bit. But another big part of the DSpace community are the user groups. User groups, like I said, or the word describes it, they're groups, or they're arrangements of users, not members. Now, members are something, you know, we said this different, where we have contributions, financial contributions and membership with the DSpace program. But users is really anyone who uses DSpace. And at times, and this is actually really helpful for the DSpace program, and we encourage that, these users, they form groups, they organize themselves. For example, they can organize themselves usually according to country or language. We have a Mexican user group, we have a German user group, we have a North American user group, and a Peruvian user group, and all of that. And if we think about DSpace sort of as a city, a large city, then these user groups are sort of like neighborhoods. And that's very helpful because, as you know, if you think of a city, to organize itself, usually you have to break it down in smaller parts, and that helps to make sure everything runs smoothly and efficiently and successfully and all of that. And it's the same really with user groups. User groups are this, or let me say, the stronger the user groups, the stronger the DSpace program. The more active the user groups, the better off the DSpace program. User groups can get together, they can create or organize events. A lot of user groups, for example, have an annual event. Some do it virtually once a year, some do it in person and meet. and just kind of touch base and see, well, what's going on within the community that or the sub-community, I should say, that's the sub-community that I am part of. What's happening in Mexico? How are people, how are institutions using DSpace? What problems are they dealing with? Where's the future going, and all of that. And some also have monthly meetings. Some have chat lists where they organize themselves. And that can be really helpful then to filter out the trends of what's happening around the world. Because often then we have user group coordinators, so people who can then come to other meetings that we organize. We also organize meetings with all the global user group coordinators about a few times a year, and where we then listen to them and see what's going on. Another thing that I briefly wanted to mention is the idea of a consortium. Now, a consortium is something where several institutions that want to become DSpace members, they combine their resources, they combine their contributions, and they give this not as an individual contribution from my institution, but they give it together. And this has the advantage that, for example, if you have an institution, let's say they can only contribute $500 a year. Well, if I contribute $500 a year, I cannot be considered for the election. So I cannot get a seat on governance. But now, if let's say I have 10 institutions that contribute 500, now that's $5,000, and they contribute this together. Now, as a consortium, as this group, with those $5,000, now they become part of the election process, because now they are qualified for that. And now they can send from this group of institutions, they can send one individual to the nomination, to the election, and they can have the opportunity to be elected and then possibly serve on governance. And that's another great way to if institutions don't have resources that allow them to directly participate in governance, they can bundle this and then become part of the governance group.
Thank you so much. This is one of the most asked questions, because the community doesn't know how to participate or how to communicate the feedback they have from the final users and also from the libraries from the institution. I think with this we could close this first section. We could go to a brief announcements about DSpace, and then we could continue. Thank you, Holger. And
Okay.
we are back in one sec.
Okay.
DSpace es más que un repositorio institucional. Los repositorios pueden ser temáticos o pueden ayudarte a estar gestionando desde la parte de tus informes como institución, también tus tesis o algún proceso o proyecto de científico, de algunas investigaciones que tu institución esté gestionando, ¿no? Entonces, en este sentido, es una herramienta estratégica que impulsa a la ciencia abierta. Y aquí es donde entra la ciencia abierta, porque la ciencia abierta tiene esta parte de ser un acceso libre y equitativo al conocimiento. La ciencia abierta lo que hace es darle la oportunidad de acceder a personas que no necesariamente son de tu institución, a recursos que tú como institución sí estás generando, ¿vale? Entonces, esta parte lo que hace es que su objetivo de los repositorios no solo es almacenar documentos, sino también garantizar que la parte de los resultados de investigación o archivos que estés gestionando sean accesibles para todos y no exista una barrera de acceso. Entonces, en esta parte, DSpace se convierte en un aliado esencial en la gestión del conocimiento abierto, y tú como administrador, tu rol importante es clave en este proceso, porque tú vas a ayudar a que este proceso se vaya cumpliendo. Entonces, ¿Cómo se vincula toda esta parte de lo que es DSpace y ciencia abierta en este punto? Y tú como rol administrador, ¿qué papel juegas en todo este proceso? Bueno, DSpace es si bien no lo sabes o te recuerdo, es una plataforma de código abierto. Está diseñada para almacenar y gestionar y también preservar contenidos digitales, pero su verdadera ponencia arranca en su capacidad para difundir el conocimiento de forma libre y accesible. Dos conceptos que acabamos de mencionar que son ligados a la ciencia abierta. Uno de los principios básicos de la ciencia, ¿vale? Entonces, la ciencia abierta busca eliminar lo que son las barreras que limitan el acceso a la información, ¿no? Entonces, DSpace contribuye a este objetivo, permite a los investigadores y también a algunos otros usuarios a estar consultando esta información de cualquier parte del mundo. Como administrador, tu función no se limita solamente a gestionar archivos, estás contribuyendo activamente al movimiento global de ciencia abierta, ayudando a que el conocimiento vaya fluyendo libremente y potencializando el impacto social de la investigación.
¿Qué tal con esta información que nos acaban de compartir? ¿No les parece realmente interesante y revelador? Muchas veces esa información o esta perspectiva que nos ofrece Holger suele pasar o desapercibida o casi invisible para nosotros los usuarios, ¿no? Me refiero a la estructura que da soporte y que en realidad sostiene DSpace. Es realmente impresionante. Y además, hay algunos otros comentarios que me gustaría ir trayendo aquí a la mesa, sobre todo por su relevancia, ¿no? El primero de ellos es entender que DSpace es realmente una democracia participativa. Es decir, funciona a través de una serie de votaciones en la cual año con año se va eligiendo al líder del grupo. ¿Esto qué significa? Y es algo, pongan atención porque es algo muy, muy interesante. Significa que, sin importar de qué institución seas, tienes la oportunidad de candidatear a tus postulantes. Y esto va a permitir y va a asegurar que la voz de Latinoamérica y en general de todas y cada una de las universidades e instituciones que conforman parte de estos grupos puedan ser escuchadas. Así que es una oportunidad que Latinoamérica debe aprovechar. Hay que hacernos presente dentro de esta comunidad de usuarios de DSpace. El segundo punto que me gustaría traer aquí a colación es lo que mencionó Holger, esta palabra de consorcios. Este concepto es algo muy importante, de mucha trascendencia para nosotros, para nuestra región latinoamericana, porque en caso de que una institución no logre solventar su membresía individual, pueden aliarse, pueden formar consorcios, otras instituciones para poder darle el soporte que ésta necesita, ¿no? Y esto abre una posibilidad inmensa para Latinoamérica y específicamente para México. Imagínense que las universidades logren generar realmente un consorcio de universidades mexicanas en la cual puedan generar una colaboración participativa y obviamente tejer una red que puedan darse soporte como un verdadero grupo de usuarios mexicanos de DSpace. Es algo que realmente tiene una trascendencia importantísima en nuestro contexto. Y como tercer punto, me gustaría traer a colación una declaración que a mí me da mucha paz. Me refiero a esta capacidad que existe dentro del grupo mexicano de usuarios a formar parte de los ejercicios de gobernanza. ¿A qué me refiero? Mes a mes se abre una ventana de participación en la cual todos, sin importar que no seas miembro, con que seas un usuario, con eso basta, pueden formar parte de este ejercicio de gobernanza para tomar decisiones realmente importantes y significativas dentro del futuro de DSpace. Así que ya lo saben, tienen que estar atentos para poder formar parte de este grupo de gobernanza. Y pues bueno, ¿qué les parece si regresamos ahorita con Nid a que nos dé esta segunda parte de la entrevista? Vamos contigo, Nid.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back for this first session for DSpace Talk. After we were talking about the strategy that DSpace has for the community work and the feedback and the importance for the DSpace groups, there are some concerns about DSpace itself. For example, there was a big step between DSpace 6 and DSpace 7. There are a huge change between those versions. some of the repositories were wondering about the functionalities that in DSpace 6 and earlier versions have, for example, for the discoverability, browse options, etc. And DSpace 7 is offering new functionalities, but it seems that are disappearing some options or functionalities for older versions. What are the strategy in this case? How the community, the technical community, are planning to continue growing the platform, but also how DSpace 8 and also DSpace 9 ensure continuing the key functionality for the repositories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. DSpace 6 to 7, DSpace 7 was a really big release. It was one of the biggest ones that DSpace has had, and many lines of code were written. DSpace versions 1 through 6 were really separate systems, and then DSpace 7 really became a very completely new system. And of course, this also had to do with the introduction of entities and all of that. And there were, because of that, there were some features that were lost between 6 and 7 because it was such a radical redesign. But now with the advent of DSpace 7, DSpace is now built in a way that any version that comes after that, so we're talking about DSpace 8, DSpace 9, 10, and so forth and so on, does not lose any features anymore. There's going to be continuity of features. So anything that was in 7 is going to be in 8, in 9, and 10, and so forth and so on. Now, of course, this means that if you are using DSpace 6 or lower, and you are going to upgrade to 7 or 8 or 9, which comes out this May, you're going to lose some of the features. If you are missing some features, if there's something where you say, we're using, this feature, where you're currently using DSpace 6, we're using this feature, and we really need it. So that's why we're not upgrading. We don't want to upgrade to DSpace 7 because it's not in DSpace 7, and so forth. Again, like I mentioned earlier, one of the ways you can address that is by contributing your own code. So we always welcome contributors and volunteers. Of course, it doesn't mean that anyone can just contribute code and say, here, I give this to DSpace and it's going to be accepted. It has to agree with the priorities that governance sets. And each year, for each release, the DSpace steering group sets priorities and says, this is what we want to work on. However, some of these priorities are very general at times. For example, for DSpace 7, we had the priority, any feature that was in DSpace 6 and that should be in DSpace 7 can be added, can be submitted. So if you're a developer, you could have submitted that. And even if the feature that you would like to suggest and submit on GitHub is not within the priorities of steering, please let us know anyways. Submit it or write us, and we can take it to steering and ask, is this okay if we include that feature in the next release of DSpace? So if you are able to, if you have the resources, you are a developer, create a ticket, because that's really something that helps us then to move forward with that. And even if you're not a developer, continue to be active and voice your concerns. Come to the DCAT meetings. Let us know. Write us an email and say, look, we need help with this because we need this feature. Or go through your user group and talk to others about it and have that voice. And then we can see if we can add that to future DSpace versions.
Also, one of the concerns from the institutions is that DSpace 7 and 8 seem to require more resources and a larger infrastructure. Is there a plan to improve this point for DSpace 7 and 9 and further versions? Is a roadmap for this that the community can see in open access?
It's also a good question. Yeah. So it's true. Because of the redesign, DSpace 7 especially, and also 8 required more resources. DSpace governance the steering group is aware of that, and they've made it a top priority for DSpace 9 to work on performance improvements. So if you go to the Lyrasis wiki, the DSpace wiki, if you're not familiar with that, we can also provide the link for that. The DSpace wiki lists the priorities for each software development, for each version, I should say. And for version 9, you will see that performance improvements was one of the main things that are listed. And the developers have been working on that tirelessly in the last year to improve performance. And with DSpace 9, it's going to drastically improve performance as well. There are many tickets that were created. A lot of hours of work went into that, and we're hoping really to see big differences and changes in that. And of course, they're also working on then backporting those developments into 7 and into 8. So currently we are on DSpace 8.1. So with DSpace 8.2, these things will be backported. So DSpace 8.2 will then have the improvements that DSpace 9 also has. And the same with DSpace 7. We are on 7.6.3, and then 7.6.4 will have the improvements that DSpace 9 has.
Okay. What will be the difference between these versions? There is any documentation about these specific differences between, for example, DSpace 6, 4 and DSpace 8 to DSpace 9?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite get it.
Is there any documentation, public documentation, where the developers from the region could analyze and understand the differences between DSpace 6, 4, DSpace 8, 2, and DSpace 9? Because it is a fact that these versions are getting improved, are getting better, but with some functionalities, DSpace 7 and DSpace 8, with some functionalities that will be published and launched in DSpace 9, but where the community can consult these differences to take a better decision between which version install in their institution.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for explaining that again. So really, it's the Lyrasis wiki, the DSpace wiki that I just mentioned, and we can, like I said, provide that link. On the wiki, you have the both the roadmap and the functionality for each version, and you can then compare version by version. You can go 5, 6, 7, 8. We also already have a page for 9 where you can see what is worked on, which tickets are being implemented, and what does that mean for DSpace. It's all listed in detail. That would be the best way to really check and compare that information. Yeah.
Thank you, Holger. I think we are almost on time, but I would like to ask the final question to close this technical section. Is there are some institutions that are still on DSpace 6 and earlier versions. They are wondering if it is really necessary to upgrade the version to DSpace 7 and further versions. What will be the benefits, or how we can promote this changing version for newer versions of DSpace? What the institution could obtain for these new functionalities? What will be the best way to go into this work?
So the short answer is no. It is not absolutely necessary to upgrade. You can keep running your version 6, even 5. In fact, I learned of an institution just recently that just this year, they upgraded from version 1 to version 7. So that's possible. They have been running DSpace version 1 for almost 20 years or so. The only thing is to keep in mind that DSpace has a 3-year, or I shouldn't say 3-year, I should say 3-release maintenance cycle. So starting from the current release plus the 2 previous releases are supported. So if there's anything that needs to happen in terms of updates, bug fixes, security fixes, we will work on those versions. So right now, once version 9 comes out, we will work on 9, 8, and 7. When 10 comes out, it's going to be 10, 9, and 8. So if you're running an earlier version, you are not going to be covered by any of that. And that might present a problem. And of course, especially in terms of functionality, integrations with other systems, it might make more sense than to upgrade to a newer version. But you don't have to upgrade from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8. You can upgrade, like I said, from 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 to 7. Of course, that means your data is upgraded. Anything you have stored in DSpace is moved and migrated. We're not talking about the interface or the customization. That would be something that is not moved along with it. But again, on the wiki page, there's the migration guide that helps understand how that works. But so that's the answer to that question.
Algo que debes considerar al principio siempre es hacer un diagnóstico inicial. Evalúa el volumen de datos y las incompatibilidades del sistema. Tienes que hacer toda esta parte del inventario. ¿Cuántos archivos tienes? ¿Qué manejas? Metadatos que tengas, condiciones en la parte de los formularios, también en la parte de los permisos que debas conservar. También si quieres mantener toda la estructura inicial que tienes en tu repositorio, hablemos que estamos, por ejemplo, vamos a hacer una actualización. Entonces, considera todos estos puntos que quieres que se mantengan en la actualización, que aquí un paréntesis, es importante que en las actualizaciones mantengamos siempre la fidelidad de la versión anterior. Obviamente va a haber cambios en las versiones y por eso también hay que colocarlos o vamos a tener que tenerlo en mente. Por ejemplo, una de las maneras puede ser cuando hacemos una conexión con lo que es Google Analytics, que son la parte de estadísticas. Actualmente es una forma distinta a la que se trabajaba en una versión 6, que en la versión 6 era a través de lo que eran los handle, y a través de ello iban recolectando la información de cada uno de los ítems. Actualmente Google Analytics en su nueva versión con lo que es DSpace lo manejan distintos. No maneja el handle ahora, maneja lo que es la parte del UUID o el ID propio del ítem que le genera el propio DSpace. Entonces, este tipo de inconsistencias entre versiones hay que tomarlas en cuenta y también estar leyendo constantemente las nuevas posibilidades o nuevas mejoras que conllevan lo que son las nuevas versiones, sobre todo en esta parte de los repositorios en DSpace. Otra parte, en caso de que quisiéramos tener o esta parte de hacer una interoperabilidad con otro sistema, es la parte de la selección de herramientas y métodos. Siempre hay que elegir qué herramientas vamos a utilizar para la migración de datos. Si va a ser una transferencia de la parte de servidor a servidor, qué debemos hacer, qué debemos considerar. También la parte de cómo recibe la información el sistema al que vamos a enviar, incluso aunque sea un mismo repositorio. Hablábamos anteriormente las diferentes formas en las que reciben los metadatos, qué metadatos necesitamos enviar, qué conservar en la parte de nuestra estructura y también cómo lo recibe, bajo qué formatos hay que estarlos enviando constantemente. Otra parte siempre es la validación y las pruebas, realizar pruebas para asegurar la integridad de los datos, que nuestros datos se estén llevando correctamente, que las estadísticas las estemos registrando correctamente a través de Google Analytics, por ejemplo, o también que estemos enviando toda la información de mi repositorio a otros repositorios de manera efectiva y que no se pierda la información. Otra parte es la ejecución de la migración. Siempre es la parte de la programación, supervisar el proceso de migración. Por lo regular, los procesos de migración se trata de no hacer en tiempos que sean demasiado cortos y siempre considerar tiempos colchón o tiempos que nos den oportunidad de reaccionar ante problemas que no hemos previsto en nuestra planeación. Entonces, siempre tener esta parte del colchones, tiempo, nos va a ayudar a estar resolviendo problemas que vayan surgiendo durante el camino. Y como siempre, hacer actividades post-migración, realizar lo que es una revisión, realizar la configuración de los sistemas externos, que estén constantemente en comunicación y reciban constantemente la información de manera correcta. Si nuestra transferencia va a ser por OAI entre interfaz y a otra interfaz, entonces considerar que este proceso de OAI se puede estar realizando de manera periódica. Por lo regular, cuando son transferencias de ese tipo, comunicaciones entre DSpace y se hace por procesos de OAI, es recomendable hacer que se vaya actualizando la información de manera automática y lo podamos ir configurando desde el back, obviamente, ir configurando esta automatización. Puede ser cada 15 días, puede ser cada mes, dependiendo qué tanto nosotros vayamos alimentando esa colección o comunidad que queremos que se vaya transfiriendo. Entonces, en este sentido, hay que ir viendo o realizando este tipo de acciones. Estos 5 pasos nos pueden ir ayudando a hacer nuestra planeación y también considerar nuestros tiempos. Entonces, de la parte de ir haciendo todo este proceso. Cuando son estos procesos por OAI, son cantidades muy grandes, sí es recomendable tener al menos un tiempo considerable de un mes en realizar lo que son estas actividades, o también estar viendo sobre todo también cómo está de sobrecargado nuestro equipo. También es uno de los factores que nos va a ayudar a determinar esta parte de la planeación.
Bien, con esta información seguramente habrá muchas cabezas que están pensando ya en algunas reflexiones, y una de las más importantes que me gustaría dejar sobre la mesa es entender que DSpace funciona más como una comunidad. Es decir, ¿se requiere trabajo de tiempo completo de gente dedicada a la plataforma? Sí, pero no es más de 2 personas, ¿no? Realmente todo el demás trabajo es un trabajo de voluntariado, en el cual la comunidad forma una parte activa de todo este movimiento. Así que recuerda, cada uno de nosotros, cada una de nosotras tiene una responsabilidad única y un compromiso de seguir contribuyendo a este proyecto de DSpace. Es por eso que como Grupo Mexicano de Usuarios de DSpace tenemos una oportunidad en verdad invaluable para poder organizarnos mejor, para poder hacer participaciones mucho más enfocadas, para poder generar realmente una red de usuarios en la cual podamos formar parte de este consorcio de universidades que ya comentábamos y que pueda tomar decisiones activas sobre la gobernanza, pero también compartiendo todo este tipo de experiencias que enriquecen y van mejorando nuestra experiencia de usuario, sobre todo en nuestra región mexicana.
Thank you so much, Holger. This is a really helpful meeting, a really useful interview, because the community is interested to understand better the work of DSpace in general. It was a pleasure to talk with you in this first DSpace Talk interview. Hope to see you again in next sessions, and thank you so much, Holger, for your time.
It was my pleasure too. Thank you, Nydia. Have a good day. Take care.
And for all the viewers, thank you so much. See you the next time.
Pues así es como estamos llegando al final de esta primera edición. En verdad quiero agradecer muchísimo a Holger por su espacio, por su tiempo, por dedicarnos estos momentos para poder aclarar todas esas dudas que estoy seguro que serán de gran valía para todo el grupo mexicano de usuarios de DSpace. Y también quiero agradecer, por supuesto, a nuestra querida amiga y compañera Nydia López. Muchas gracias por tu participación y por llevar a cabo esta entrevista. Pues bien, recuerden que esto es solamente el comienzo de DSpace Talks. En los próximos episodios seguiremos explorando mucho más de todo este universo que son los repositorios institucionales. Así que por favor, háganos llegar todas aquellas dudas, comentarios, aquellos temas que les gustaría que fuéramos tratando más adelante. Y recuerden, somos una comunidad y debemos de trabajar como tal. Así que les invito a mantenerse en comunicación con nosotros. Van a estar apareciendo aquí abajo las redes del Grupo Mexicano de Usuarios de DSpace. Y pues bueno, yo fui Germán Díaz. Muchas gracias por acompañarme en este viaje de DSpace Talks. Hasta luego.